The war had lasted for 40 years. I stood at the window of her chambers, watching the twin suns set over the burning fields of her. The Empire had lost millions of warriors. The humans had lost even more. And still, neither side could claim victory. She was the youngest daughter of Emperor Or, and today she learned that her life was no longer her own. A marriage, her father had said, his voice heavy with defeat. The humans demand a royal marriage to seal the peace treaty. They want one of my daughters. Her older sisters had refused. They called it a disgrace. They said they would rather die than share a bed with a weak, soft-skinned human. But I had seen the reports. She had seen the numbers. If this war continued for another decade, there would be no empire left to protect. So she volunteered. Now, 3 months later, she stood in her wedding dress, waiting to meet the human male who would become her husband. The dress was traditional design, made from the scales of a mountain serpent. It was heavy and uncomfortable, but it made her look powerful. She needed to look powerful today, because inside she felt like a frightened child. A knock came at her door. "Enter," she said, keeping her voice steady. Her handmaiden, a young female named stepped inside. Her purple eyes were wide with curiosity. "The human delegation has arrived, Princess. Your future husband is with them." I took a deep breath. "What does he look like?" I hesitated. "He is smaller than I expected, much smaller than our males. He has dark hair and kind eyes. He smiles a lot." "Smiles?" I frowned. "We are ending a 40-year war with this marriage, and he smiles." "Perhaps humans show happiness differently, Princess. Perhaps humans are fools." I turned back to the window. She had studied humans during the war, as all commanders were required to do. She knew their basic biology. They were soft creatures with no natural armor, no claws, no fangs. Their bones were fragile compared to bones. Their muscles were weaker. Their senses were duller. And yet, somehow, these weak creatures had fought the mighty empire to a standstill for 40 years. It made no sense to her, but she had learned not to question such things. War was chaos, and chaos followed no logic. "Tell them I am ready," she said. The ceremony took place in the grand hall of the imperial palace. Thousands of nobles filled the seats, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and disgust. At the front of the hall stood Emperor Or, his massive frame bent with age and sorrow. Beside him stood the human delegation. I walked down the center aisle, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She could feel every gaze upon her. She could hear the whispers. "Poor princess. Married to a human. What a waste." She ignored them all and focused on the figure waiting at the altar. The human male was exactly as I had described. He was short by standards, barely reaching A's shoulder. His skin was a warm brown color, smooth and unmarked by scales or natural armor. His hair was black and neatly combed. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing like the elaborate armor of males. And he was smiling. It was not a mocking smile or a nervous smile. It was a genuine smile, warm and welcoming, as if he was actually happy to meet her. I did not know what to make of it. She reached the altar and stood beside him. Up close, she could see more details. His eyes were dark and intelligent. His hands were small but steady. There was a calmness about him that she had not expected. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Ho. It is an honor to meet you, Princessa." His voice was gentle. His pronunciation of her name was imperfect but respectful. "The honor is mine," she replied, because that was what she was supposed to say. The ceremony began. A priest spoke the ancient words of binding, while a human official read from their own traditions. I barely listened. She was too busy studying her new husband. He stood very still throughout the ceremony. His breathing was slow and controlled. His eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the hall, every face in the crowd, every exit and entrance. It was subtle, but I noticed it. It was the way a soldier scanned a battlefield. Interesting, she thought. Perhaps there is more to this human than his soft appearance suggests. When the ceremony ended, they were officially married, husband and wife, two former enemies bound together by politics and desperation. The celebration feast lasted for hours. Nobles approached them one by one, offering congratulations that sounded more like condolences. Ho accepted each greeting with patience and grace, never showing any sign of offense. "You handle them well," I said quietly, during a rare moment of privacy. "I have experience with difficult situations," Ho replied. "This is not the hardest room I have had to navigate." "What was the hardest?" He paused, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, something dark and distant. "A place called Kendo Station," he said, "during the war, but that was a long time ago." Before she could ask more, another noble approached them, and the conversation ended. That night they were escorted to their shared chambers. It was tradition for newlywed couples to spend their first night together, but I had made it clear to her father that this would be a political marriage only. There would be no intimacy unless both parties agreed to it. To her surprise, Ho had accepted this condition without complaint. The chambers were large and luxurious, with a massive bed in the center and separate bathing areas on each side. Ho walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. "Your world is beautiful," he said. "The twin suns create colors I have never seen before." "It was more beautiful before the war," I replied, "before the burning." "All worlds were more beautiful before war." He turned to face her. "I want you to know something, princess. I did not ask for this marriage. I was chosen by my government because I have certain skills they considered useful. But I promise you this, I will never hurt you. I will never force you to do anything you do not want to do, and I will protect you with my life if necessary." I studied him carefully. "Why would you protect me? My people killed millions of your kind. And my people killed millions of yours. The war was cruel to both sides, but the war is over now. We are husband and wife. That means something to me, even if it was not our choice." She did not know how to respond to that. Males did not speak this way. They did not make promises of protection to females who were stronger than them. They did not show vulnerability so openly. "You are strange," she said finally. Ho smiled. "I have been told that before." He walked to a small couch near the window and sat down. "I will sleep here tonight. You take the bed. If you need anything, please wake me." "You would sleep on a couch on your wedding night." "I would sleep on the floor if it made you more comfortable. Your peace of mind matters more than my comfort, princess." I watched him settle onto the couch, pulling a thin blanket over himself. Within minutes, his breathing became slow and steady. He was asleep. She stood there for a long time, confused and unsettled. This was not what she had expected. She had expected arrogance or fear or perhaps even cruelty. She had not expected kindness. Eventually, she climbed into the bed and closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of fire and war. The following weeks passed in a strange rhythm. I and Ho developed a routine of polite distance. They ate breakfast together each morning, discussing small matters of politics and culture. They attended official functions as a united couple, presenting an image of peace to both their peoples. But in private, they remained strangers. I learned small things about him. He woke early each morning and performed strange exercises in their chambers, moving his body through slow, controlled motions that looked almost like a dance. He read constantly, consuming books about history and culture with genuine interest. He was patient with servants who struggled to understand his language. He never raised his voice in anger. He was, by all appearances, exactly what he seemed: a gentle, intelligent diplomat with no remarkable qualities. And yet sometimes, I caught glimpses of something else. It happened during a formal dinner when a drunk noble made an insulting comment about humans. Saw Ho's expression change for just a fraction of a second. The gentle smile vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. His eyes became empty, like windows into a dark room. Then it was gone, and the smile returned as if nothing had happened. It happened again during a tour of the palace gardens, when a small creature darted across their path. Ho's hand moved to his belt so fast that I barely saw it. His body shifted into a fighting stance, muscles coiled and ready. When he realized it was just an animal, he relaxed, but I noticed that his breathing had not changed at all. His heart rate had not increased. Most beings became frightened when startled. It was a natural response, but Ho showed no fear, only readiness. "What were you before the peace treaty?" she asked him one evening. "Before you became a diplomat?" Ho was quiet for a moment. "I was a soldier." "What kind of soldier?" "The kind that does difficult things, so that others do not have to." He did not explain further, and it did not press. But she began to watch him more closely after that, searching for more cracks in his gentle mask. She found none. Perhaps, she thought, I am imagining things. Perhaps humans are exactly as weak as they appear, and I am seeing shadows where there is only light. She had no idea how wrong she was. The truth would reveal itself soon enough, written in blood and fire, in the screams of dying rebels and the thunder of a single human's wrath. But for now, there was only peace. And Ho continued to smile. 3 months had passed since the wedding. I stood in the grand hall, surrounded by diplomats from both species. It was the first official celebration of the peace treaty, a gathering meant to show the galaxy that the war was truly over. Human and officials mingled together, sharing drinks and careful conversation. Emperor Or sat upon his throne, looking older than ever. The war had taken everything from him, his sons, his strength, his hope. Only his daughters remained, and one of them now belonged to the humans. Ho stood beside I, dressed in formal human clothing. He had learned much about customs in the past months. He knew when to bow, when to speak, and when to remain silent. The nobles had begun to accept him, if not respect him. "You seem troubled," Ho said quietly, noticing her expression. "I received a message this morning," I replied, "from General." Ho's eyes flickered with recognition. The commander of the Eastern armies, the one who opposed the peace treaty. "You know of him?" "I know of all the major military leaders. It was part of my preparation for this assignment." "I studied him. You prepared well." Preparation is the difference between life and death in many situations. Before she could respond, the main doors of the grand hall burst open. Armed warriors poured into the room, their weapons raised. They wore black armor marked with a red symbol, the mark of the Purity movement, a radical faction that believed peace with humans was a betrayal of honor. At their head stood General himself. He was massive, even by standards. His body was covered in battle scars, and his eyes burned with fanatic hatred. He pointed his blade at Emperor Or. "The treaty is void," announced, his voice echoing through the hall. "We will not bow to humans. We will not share our blood with their weak species. Today we take back our honor." The palace guards moved to intercept, but they were outnumbered. The rebel warriors cut them down without mercy. Screams filled the air as diplomats scattered in panic. A's hand went to the ceremonial knife at her belt. It was a small weapon, meant for decoration more than combat, but it was all she had. "Stay behind me," Ho said. She almost laughed. "You cannot protect me. Look at them. There are hundreds of warriors here." "I know." His voice was different now. The gentle tone was gone, replaced by something flat and cold. When she looked at his face, she saw that the smile had disappeared. The mask was falling away. General strode toward the throne, his warriors spreading out to surround the remaining guests. He stopped in front of Emperor Or and raised his blade. "Any last words, Old One?" Or lifted his head with dignity. You are a fool. This rebellion will destroy what remains of our people. Better destruction than submission to humans. Raised his blade to strike. Stop. The voice was not loud, but it carried through the hall with perfect clarity. Every head turned toward its source. Ho stepped forward. He had removed his formal jacket, revealing a simple white shirt underneath. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. He walked toward with slow, measured steps, as if he had all the time in the world. Several rebel warriors moved to intercept him, but raised his hand. Wait, the general said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Let the human speak. I want to hear what a creature so weak has to say. Ho stopped a few meters from. The size difference between them was almost comical. The general stood over 2 meters tall, his body thick with muscle and natural armor. Ho was barely a third of his mass. I have a proposal, Ho said. Let the emperor and the guests go. Take me instead. I am the symbol of this peace treaty. My death will send a stronger message than killing an old male. Laughed. You think I want a symbol? I want blood. I want to show my people what happens to those who betray our kind. Then take my blood. There is plenty of it, but let the others go. I felt something strange in her chest. This human, this small, soft creature, was offering his life for people who had treated him with contempt for months. He was willing to die for beings who considered him inferior. Why? Leaned down, bringing his face close to Ho's. Do you know what I did to humans during the war, little creature? I tore them apart with my bare hands. I crushed their skulls and fed their bodies to my warriors. You are nothing to me, less than nothing. Ho did not flinch. I know exactly what you did during the war, General. I have read the reports. Station Gamma 7, the Titan Colony Massacre, the burning of New Sol. Something changed in his expression, a flicker of surprise. New Sol, Ho continued, his voice still calm. 43,000 civilians, men, women, children. You ordered your warriors to take no prisoners. The fires burned for 3 days. Those were enemies of the Empire. They deserved their fate. Among those civilians was a family named Park, a mother, a father, 2 daughters. The youngest was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of flowers. Frowned. Why do you speak of this? Ho's eyes met the general's. For the first time, I saw what lay behind the gentle mask. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something far worse. It was patience. The patient, terrible certainty of a predator who has found its prey. Because I was there, Ho said. I arrived 12 hours after your warriors left. I walked through the ashes. I found what remained of that family. The mother had tried to shield her daughters with her own body. It did not help. Stepped back, suddenly uncertain. That was the day I made a promise, Ho continued. I promised that I would find the ones responsible. I promised that I would look into their eyes and make them understand what they had done. I promised that I would show them what humans are capable of when we stop being gentle. He reached up and slowly unbuttoned his shirt. When the fabric fell away, every in the room drew a sharp breath. Ho's body was covered in scars, not small scars but massive ones running across his chest, his shoulders, his stomach. They were the marks of battles that should have killed any ordinary being. Some looked like claw marks, others looked like burn wounds. One long scar ran from his left shoulder to his right hip, as if someone had tried to cut him in half. But it was not the scars that made the warriors step back. It was his muscles. Hidden beneath his loose clothing, Ho's body was built like a weapon. Every muscle was defined with perfect precision, not bulky like warriors but lean and dense, designed for speed and power. His movements, which had seemed so gentle before, now revealed themselves as carefully controlled. He had been holding back, restraining himself, hiding his true nature behind a mask of softness. Do you know what humans call warriors like me? Ho asked. We are called ghosts. We do not fight in armies. We do not follow rules. We are sent alone into enemy territory to do the things that regular soldiers cannot do. We are trained from childhood to kill without hesitation, to survive without food or water for weeks, to ignore pain that would drive other beings mad. He took a step forward. During the war, I killed 1,427 warriors. I did not count the ones who died in explosions or fires I started, only the ones I killed with my own hands. Another step. I was sent to your 3 times on missions that were classified at the highest level. I walked through your cities, your military bases, your palaces. No one saw me. No one knew I was there until it was too late. Raised his blade, but his hand was trembling. You were here, the general whispered, on Prime during the war. Yes, I watched Emperor or sleep once. I stood beside his bed for an hour deciding whether to kill him. I chose not to because his death would have prolonged the war, but I could have done it, just as I could have killed you, General. I found you during the Battle of Kendo Station. You were injured, sleeping in a medical tent. I was 3 meters away from you. Why did you not kill me? Ho smiled, and this time there was no warmth in it. Because I wanted you to live. I wanted you to grow old and fat with your victories. I wanted you to feel safe. And then, when the time was right, I wanted to look into your eyes and tell you exactly who I was before I ended your life. The hall was silent. Every being stared at the small human, seeing him for the first time. A's heart was pounding. This was not the gentle diplomat she had married. This was something else entirely, something ancient and terrible wearing the shape of a man. Made his decision. Kill him, he ordered. Kill him now. 12 warriors charged forward, their blades raised. Ho moved. It was not movement as I understood it. One moment he was standing still. The next moment he was among the warriors, flowing between them like water, his hands striking with impossible speed. The first warrior fell without making a sound, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. The second dropped with a blade buried in his own chest, somehow turned against him. The third and fourth crashed into each other as Ho ducked between them, and then they were both screaming, clutching wounds that had appeared from nowhere. In less than 5 seconds, all 12 warriors were on the ground. Ho stood in the center of them, breathing steadily, not a single drop of blood on his skin. He had not even used a weapon. He had killed them with his bare hands. Send more, he said, looking at. Send all of them, it will not matter. For the first time in his life, General felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Pure primal absolute fear. He had fought humans for 40 years. He had killed thousands of them. He had believed, truly believed, that they were weak creatures who survived only through numbers and technology. He had been wrong. He had been so terribly, terribly wrong. The being standing before him was not weak. It was not soft. It was a monster wearing human skin, a nightmare-given form, the culmination of everything they had feared but refused to believe. And it was looking at him with eyes that held no mercy. I gave you a chance, Ho said. I offered you my life in exchange for theirs. You refused. Now there is no more mercy, no more chances. Now there is only the truth. He took another step forward. And the truth, General, is that you should have killed me when you had the chance. Raised his blade and charged with a roar of desperation. Ho moved to meet him. And the hall exploded into violence. General was considered the greatest warrior in the Empire. He had fought in over 200 battles. He had killed more enemies than any other living. His blade had tasted the blood of humans, aliens, and even others who dared to challenge him. He was feared across the galaxy, a living legend of war and destruction. He lasted 4 seconds against Ho. The general's blade came down in a devastating arc, powerful enough to cut through metal. Ho it with casual ease, as if he had known exactly where the strike would land. His hand shot out, fingers striking specific points on his arm. The general's weapon fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Before could react, Ho was behind him. A precise kick to the back of the knee brought the massive warrior down. Then Ho's hands were around his throat, squeezing with strength that should have been impossible for such a small creature. "Not yet," Ho whispered into the general's ear. "You do not get to die yet. First, you will watch." He released and stood, facing the remaining rebel warriors. There were over 100 of them, all armed, all trained killers. Ho smiled. "Come," he said. They came. I had witnessed many battles in her life. She had been trained in combat since childhood, as all royalty were. She understood violence and death. She thought she understood what warriors were capable of. She understood nothing. What Ho did was not fighting. It was art. It was poetry written in blood and bone. Every movement was perfect. Every strike calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. He flowed through the rebel warriors like wind through grass, leaving broken bodies in his wake. He did not fight like a human. He did not fight like a... He fought like something else entirely, something that had moved beyond species and biology and become pure, distilled lethality. A warrior swung a heavy blade at his head. Ho ducked, caught the warrior's arm, and used his own momentum to throw him into 3 of his companions. Before they could recover, Ho was among them, hands and feet striking with surgical precision. 2 more warriors charged from behind. Without looking, Ho dropped to the ground, sweeping their legs out from under them. He was back on his feet before they hit the floor, driving his elbow into one throat and his knee into another face. A blade finally found its mark, slicing across his shoulder. Ho did not even flinch. He grabbed the blade with his bare hand, ignoring the blood that ran down his fingers, and pulled its owner forward into a devastating headbutt. "He bleeds," one warrior shouted. "He can be killed." They pressed their attack with renewed courage. It did not matter. Ho fought through the pain as if it did not exist. He was faster than them, stronger than they expected, and far more skilled than anyone had imagined. For every wound they inflicted on him, he killed 5 of them. The floor of the grand hall became slippery with blood. A watched in horrified fascination. She had called him weak. She had him. She had thought the peace treaty had forced him into a marriage with a being he could never match. Now she realized the truth. She was the one who had married above her station. The battle lasted 7 minutes. By the end of it, over 80 rebel warriors lay dead or dying on the floor. The survivors had retreated to the edges of the hall, their weapons held in trembling hands, their eyes wide with terror. Ho stood in the center of the carnage, covered in blood. Some of it was his own, most of it was not. He was breathing harder now, and I could see multiple wounds on his body, cuts, stabs, a deep gash on his thigh that should have crippled him. He ignored them all. "Is there anyone else?" he asked, his voice still calm. No one moved. Ho turned to face General, who remained on his knees where he had been left. The general's face was pale, his eyes fixed on the human with an expression of complete disbelief. "Do you understand now?" Ho asked. "Do you see what we are?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. "For 40 years you hunted us. You burned our colonies. You killed our families. And through it all you believed that we were weak, that we survived only through luck and numbers. You never understood the truth." Ho crouched down to meet the general's eyes. "We are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We have been killing each other for 1,000,000 years. We have perfected violence the way other species perfect art or music. We create weapons that can destroy worlds. We train children to kill before they learn to read. We have fought so many wars among ourselves that we stopped counting." He placed his hand on his shoulder, almost gently. "The only reason you survived contact with us is because we chose to be gentle. We met the galaxy and decided to be peaceful. We smiled and made treaties and pretended to be soft, because we knew what would happen if we showed our true nature. We knew how the other species would react if they understood what we really were. His grip tightened. But you pushed us. You burned our worlds. You killed our people. You woke the thing that lives inside every human, the ancient hunger that our ancestors used to conquer a planet full of predators. And now you see it. Now you understand. General began to weep. Great, shuddering sobs shook his massive body. The greatest warrior of the empire, the butcher of 100 worlds, was crying like a frightened child. Ho stood and turned away. "Do not kill him," he said. "Let him live. Let him tell others what he saw here today. Let him spread the word throughout the galaxy about what happens to those who threaten human peace." He walked toward the throne, where Emperor Or still sat in stunned silence. The old ruler looked at the human with new eyes, seeing him for the first time. "Your Majesty," Ho said, bowing slightly, "I apologize for the mess. I will help clean up if you wish." Or made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You just killed 80 warriors with your bare hands, and you apologize for the mess. It seems like the polite thing to do. What are you?" The question hung in the air. Every survivor in the hall wanted to know the answer. Ho considered for a moment. "I am exactly what you saw in the peace treaty. I am a diplomat, a bridge between our peoples. I was chosen for this role because I understand both war and peace. I have seen enough death to know that it solves nothing. I want the treaty to succeed. I want our species to live together in harmony." He paused. "But I am also a husband, and when my wife's family is threatened, I respond appropriately." A's heart skipped. He had done this for her, not for politics, not for duty. He had unleashed this terrible power because she was in danger. She walked toward him on unsteady legs. The floor was slippery with blood, and she had to step over bodies to reach him. When she finally stood before him, she did not know what to say. "You are injured," she finally managed. Ho looked down at his wounds as if noticing them for the first time. "It is not serious. I have had worse. You need medical attention. Later, first, we must secure the palace. There may be more rebels outside." As if in answer, a distant explosion shook the building. Through the windows, I could see lights in the sky, more ships arriving. "Reinforcements," said from the floor, his voice broken. "The main army is coming, 10,000 warriors. They were waiting for my signal." Ho looked at the general. "You brought an army to destroy a peace celebration." "We were supposed to take the palace and hold it. The fleet would arrive and secure the planet. The treaty would be void and the war would continue." "How long until they arrive?" "They are already here. The first wave will reach the palace within the hour." Ho nodded slowly. He walked to a fallen rebel and picked up a blade, testing its weight and balance. Then he picked up another and another, tucking them into his belt. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Preparing." "For what?" He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Not anger or hatred, but a weary acceptance, the look of a man who had done terrible things and was about to do them again. "For war," he said. "There is no escape from this palace. The rebels will surround it within the hour. They will try to take it by force. The palace guards are mostly dead, and the survivors are not enough to hold the walls. Then we must surrender or flee." "No, if we surrender, they will kill everyone here as a symbol. If we flee, they will hunt us down. There is only one option left." He began walking toward the main doors. "Where are you going?" I called after him. Ho stopped at the entrance to the hall. He looked back at her over his shoulder, and for a moment she saw the gentle man she had married, the one who slept on a couch to make her comfortable, the one who smiled at everything. Then he smiled at her now, and it was the saddest smile she had ever seen. "I am going to hold this palace," he said, "until help arrives or until I die, whichever comes first." "That is impossible. One human against 10,000 warriors." "No, one human against an army." He turned back toward the door. Stay inside, protect your father, and whatever you hear, whatever you see, do not come outside." Ho! But he was already gone, walking out into the darkness toward the approaching army. Anna was left standing in a room full of bodies, realizing that she had never truly known the man she had married. Until now. The first wave of rebel warriors reached the palace walls at midnight. There were 500 of them, elite soldiers chosen to secure the gates before the main army arrived. They moved with confidence, expecting to find a palace in chaos, its defenders scattered and broken. Instead, they found Ho. He was waiting for them at the main gate, standing alone in the courtyard. He had retrieved a bag from his personal shuttle, and now he was dressed differently. Gone was the diplomatic clothing. In its place was a simple black uniform, tight against his skin, with straps holding various tools and weapons. His hands held two curved blades, taken from the fallen rebels inside. The rebel commander laughed when he saw him. "One human. They send one human to face us." Ho said nothing. The commander ordered the charge. From her position at a high window, Ho watched what happened next. She wanted to look away, but she could not. Something kept her eyes fixed on the scene below, a terrible fascination she could not explain. Ho moved differently now. In the grand hall, he had been precise and controlled. Here, in the open courtyard, he was something else entirely. He was a storm. He was fury given form. He was death walking on two legs. The rebels surrounded him, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm him. It did not work. Ho never stopped moving, never stood still long enough for them to pin him down. He flowed through their ranks like water through stone, leaving broken bodies behind him. When they tried to attack from range, throwing spears and shooting energy weapons, he was never where they aimed. He seemed to know where each attack would land before it was launched, moving with impossible grace to avoid every strike. When they formed shield walls, he went over them or around them, finding gaps that should not have existed. When they retreated to regroup, he followed, never giving them a moment to breathe. Within an hour, the first wave was destroyed. Of the 500 warriors who had charged the gate, only a handful survived. They fled into the darkness, screaming about a demon that wore human skin. Ho sat down in the courtyard, his back against a wall. He was covered in blood and sweat. New wounds joined the old ones, and he was breathing hard. But he was alive. And the night was just beginning. The second wave came at dawn. This time, there were 2,000 warriors, and they had learned from the failure of the first attack. They did not charge blindly. They surrounded the palace and began a systematic assault, hitting multiple points at once. Ho could not be everywhere at once. Or so they thought. I did not understand how he did it. Every time the rebels breached a wall, he was there. Every time they broke through a gate, he appeared to push them back. He moved through the palace like a ghost, using secret passages and hidden routes that he should not have known about. Later, she would learn that he had memorized the palace layout during his first week as her husband. He had walked every corridor, explored every room, identified every weakness and strength. He had done it quietly, without telling anyone, preparing for a day he hoped would never come. The second wave lasted until midday. By the time it ended, the palace grounds were covered with bodies. The rebels had lost over 1,500 warriors. Ho had lost more blood than any human should survive losing. He did not stop. Between waves, he moved through the palace, checking on the survivors, reinforcing weak points, setting traps with materials he found in storage rooms. He worked with calm efficiency, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Perhaps he had. I found him in the kitchens during a brief lull, drinking water and eating preserved food. His hands were shaking slightly, and his skin was pale. "You need rest," she said. "Later. You will die if you keep this up." Perhaps. He took another drink of water, but not yet, Not until help arrives. How do you know help is coming? Ho reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. I sent a signal to the human fleet when the attack began. They are 3 days away at maximum speed. I need to hold the palace for 3 days. You cannot fight for 3 days without sleep. I have done it before. He stood, testing his legs. During the war, I once stayed awake for 8 days while crossing enemy territory. The human body can endure more than most species realize. It is just a matter of will. And if your will breaks... He looked at her with those dark, tired eyes. Then I will die, and you must escape. There are tunnels beneath the palace that lead to the mountains. Take your father and anyone who can still walk. Get as far away as possible before the fleet arrives. I will not leave you. The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. Ho studied her face for a long moment. You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you are willing to die for people who treated you with contempt. I know that you fight with honor even when your enemies have none. I know that you could have fled at any time, but you stayed to protect strangers. She stepped closer to him. I know that I was wrong about you. I thought you were weak because you were gentle. I did not understand that true strength lies in choosing when to fight and when to show mercy. You are the strongest being I have ever met, Ho, and I will not leave you to die alone. For a moment, something softened in his expression. He raised his hand and touched her face, his fingers surprisingly gentle despite their calluses and scars. You are a remarkable woman, and you are a remarkable man. They stood like that for a breath, 2 beings from different worlds, finding something unexpected in each other. Then the warning bells rang, and the moment was broken. The 3rd wave had arrived. This one was different. The rebel commanders had realized that frontal assaults would not work. Instead, they sent sappers to dig beneath the walls, assassins to infiltrate through the sewers, and snipers to pick off anyone who showed themselves at the windows. Ho adapted. He collapsed the tunnels with explosives. He hunted the assassins through the palace corridors, killing them in the darkness like a predator from ancient human nightmares. He identified the sniper positions and eliminated them one by one, moving through the palace in ways the rebels could not predict. By the 2nd night, the rebels were afraid to enter the palace grounds after dark. Stories began to spread among them. They spoke of a ghost that could walk through walls, a demon that could kill without being seen, a monster that could not be stopped by blade or bullet or fire. They called him the Pale Death. The commander of the rebel army, a veteran general named On, refused to believe the stories. He had fought humans during the war. He had killed many of them. They were not demons. They were soft, fragile creatures who died like any other. On the 3rd morning, he led the 4th wave personally. 8,000 warriors charged the palace from all sides. They used heavy weapons to blast holes in the walls. They sent wave after wave of soldiers through the breaches. They overwhelmed the defenders with pure numbers. And still Ho fought. A watched from the throne room where she had gathered the surviving diplomats and wounded. She could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the palace. Screams, explosions, the clash of metal. Every few minutes, a rebel warrior would burst through one of the doors, weapon raised. And every time, Ho would appear from somewhere, intercept them, and end the threat. He was everywhere and nowhere, a shadow that struck without warning. But he was slowing down. She could see it in the way he moved, the slight hesitation in his steps, the tremor in his hands. He had been fighting for almost 70 hours without rest. His body was covered in wounds, some of them deep enough to expose bone. His left arm hung at an awkward angle, possibly broken. One of his eyes was swollen shut from a blow that had nearly killed him. And still he fought. By midday, the 4th wave was broken. The rebels retreated beyond the walls, too afraid to press their attack. General On was dead, killed by Ho's own hands in the central courtyard. The rebel army had lost over 6,000 warriors. One human had stopped them all. As the sun set on the third day, I found Ho in the garden, sitting against a blood-stained tree. His breathing was shallow, and his skin was the color of ash. "They will come again at dawn," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The fleet will be here by then. You did it. You held them long enough." "Maybe," he coughed, and blood appeared on his lips. "Or maybe I will die in the night and they will take the palace before sunrise. Either way, I have done what I could." I sat beside him. Without thinking, she took his hand in hers. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "You could have escaped. You could have taken your shuttle and left. Why did you stay and fight for people who are not your own?" Ho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, lost in memory. "Because I have seen what happens when good people do nothing. I have walked through the ashes of worlds that burned because no one stood up to stop the fire. I have held dying children in my arms and promised them that someone would remember. I have buried friends, lovers, soldiers who trusted me to lead them to victory." He turned his head to look at her. I am tired of war. I am tired of death. I am tired of being the monster that humans send to do their terrible work. When the peace treaty was signed, I hoped that I could finally rest. I hoped that I could be something other than a weapon." His hand tightened around hers. "But I realized something during these 3 days. I am not a weapon. I am a shield. I kill so that others do not have to. I fight so that people like you can live in peace. And if I must die here in this garden, defending a palace full of beings who once hated my kind, then I will die knowing that my life meant something." Tears streamed down A's face. She did not know when she had started crying. "You are not going to die," she said fiercely. "I forbid it." Despite everything, Ho laughed. It was a weak, broken sound, but it was real. "You forbid it. I am a princess. My word is law." "Then I suppose I must obey." He closed his eyes. "Wake me if the rebels attack. I will need a few hours of sleep before I can fight again." Within moments, he was unconscious. I sat beside him through the night, her hand never leaving his, watching the darkness for any sign of movement. At dawn, she saw lights in the sky. The human fleet had arrived. The human warships descended from the sky like metal angels. I counted 12 of them, each one bristling with weapons that made the fleet look primitive. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the rebel forces with cold efficiency. The rebel army did not fight. They surrendered within minutes, throwing down their weapons and begging for mercy. After 3 days of facing a single human, the thought of facing an entire fleet was more than they could bear. The war was over, again. This time, I suspected it would stay that way. She was still sitting beside Ho when the human soldiers found them. They moved through the palace in small teams, securing each room and identifying survivors. When they reached the garden, they stopped in shock. Their commander, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, stared at the scene before her. The garden was destroyed. Bodies were scattered everywhere, rebel warriors in their black armor lying in twisted heaps. And in the center of it all sat a princess, holding the hand of an unconscious human male who looked more dead than alive. "Commander Park," one of the soldiers said, recognizing Ho, "he is alive." "Barely," I replied. "He needs medical attention immediately." The silver-haired woman nodded and began issuing orders. Within minutes, human medics were swarming around Ho, connecting tubes and applying advanced treatments that I did not understand. They lifted him onto a floating stretcher and carried him toward one of the ships. I tried to follow, but the silver-haired woman stopped her. "You are Princess, his wife." "Yes." "I am Admiral Jinai. Ho served under me during the war." She studied with calculating eyes. "He killed a lot of your people." "And your people killed a lot of mine. The war is over." "Is it?" I met the Admiral's gaze without flinching. It is for me. That man defended my family with his life. He bled for beings who treated him as inferior. He stood alone against an army because he believed in peace. If that does not end the war between us, nothing will." Admiral Jinai was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. He always believed in peace. Even when he was doing terrible things, he was working toward a world where no one would have to do them anymore. Most of us thought he was naive. Perhaps we were wrong. She stepped aside, allowing it to pass. "Your husband will survive. Human medicine is advanced, and he has survived worse than this. When he wakes, tell him that his mission was successful. The peace treaty is safe." A nodded and hurried after the medics. Ho woke 3 days later. A was there when his eyes opened, sitting in a chair beside his bed in the medical bay of the human flagship. The room was white and sterile, filled with beeping machines and soft lights. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "On the fleet flagship. You have been unconscious for 3 days." She leaned forward. "How do you feel?" "Like I was stepped on by a very large creature." He tried to sit up and immediately winced. "What happened?" "You saved everyone. The rebels surrendered when the fleet arrived. General is in custody, and the Purity Movement has been declared a terrorist organization. My father has ordered their leaders executed." "And the peace treaty?" "Stronger than ever. Both species are calling you a hero. The humans say you upheld the honor of humanity. The say you demonstrated that humans are worthy of respect." She paused. "My father wants to give you a title. He wants to make you a prince of the empire." Ho closed his eyes. "I do not want titles." "I know, but you saved his life. He feels he must repay you somehow." "Staying alive is repayment enough. Seeing you alive is repayment enough." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "I am sorry if I frightened you. The things I did, the things you saw, that is not who I want to be. But it is who you are. Part of me, a part I hope to leave behind." A reached out and took his hand, just as she had in the garden. "When I was young," she said, "my mother told me that all beings have darkness inside them. What matters is not whether the darkness exists, but how we use it. Some beings let their darkness consume them. Others learn to control it, to use it only when necessary to protect those they love." She squeezed his hand. "You are not a monster, Ho. You are a guardian. You carry darkness so that others can live in light. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be honored." Ho was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "You are the first person who has ever said that to me." "Then your people are fools." He laughed, and this time it was a real laugh, warm and surprised. "Perhaps they are." The weeks that followed were filled with ceremony and celebration. The peace treaty was renewed with stronger terms, and both species committed to a future of cooperation. Human and delegations met regularly to discuss trade, culture, and mutual defense. And at the center of it all were Ho and A. They became symbols of the new peace, a living reminder that former enemies could become family. The galaxy watched them closely, looking for signs of conflict or resentment. Instead, they saw something else. They saw love. It had grown slowly, through shared meals and quiet conversations, through long walks in the rebuilt palace gardens and longer nights talking about their pasts. I learned about Ho's childhood in the mountains of Earth, his training as a soldier, and the missions that had made him both famous and haunted. Ho learned about A's responsibilities as a princess, her dreams of a peaceful future, and her fear that she would never be more than a political tool. They learned that they were more alike than different. 1 year after the siege, they renewed their vows. This time it was not a political arrangement, it was a choice. The ceremony was small, held in the garden where Ho had nearly died. Only family and close friends attended. A wore a simple dress of white, and Ho wore his old military uniform, cleaned and repaired. When the priest asked if they would stand together through all challenges, they both answered without hesitation. Yes. That night, lying beside her husband in their chambers, A finally asked the question that had been on her mind for months. When you came to Prime, when you accepted the peace treaty, did you know this would happen? Did you know you would have to fight? Ho was silent for a moment. I hoped I would not have to, but I prepared for the possibility. That is what soldiers do. We hope for peace and prepare for war. And now, do you still prepare for war? He turned to face her, and in the moonlight she could see the scars on his body, the marks of a lifetime of violence. But she could also see his eyes, and they were gentle. I prepare to protect you, he said. If that means fighting, I will fight. If it means dying, I will die. But I hope, for both our sakes, that it will mean living, growing old together, perhaps raising children who will never know the horrors we have seen. A smiled children. If you want them, I have thought about it. I think I would like to be a father, to teach a child how to be kind instead of how to kill. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and warm. I would like that too. Years later, when historians wrote about the end of the Great War, they would focus on the political treaties and diplomatic negotiations. They would analyze the military strategies and economic factors. They would debate the causes and consequences for generations. But the common people knew a different story. They told tales of a human who married an alien princess to seal a peace treaty. They spoke of a quiet man with gentle eyes and a warm smile, who hid a terrible power behind a mask of kindness. They described how he stood alone against an army, not for glory or revenge, but to protect the beings he loved. They called him the Pale Death. They called him the Guardian. They called him the bridge between worlds. But an empress of the United Human Alliance simply called him husband. And when their children asked how their parents met, she would smile and say, I married a human to end a war, and then I watched him crush entire armies. The children would laugh, thinking it was a joke. But Ho would catch her eye across the room, and they would share a secret smile. Because they both knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply chosen to be gentle. And that, I realized, was the most terrifying thing of all. Because a creature that chooses gentleness can always choose violence instead. And a creature that has mastered both is unstoppable. This was the truth that the galaxy had learned at the siege of the Imperial Palace. This was the truth that would keep the peace for 1,000 years. And this was the truth that I carried in her heart every day, watching her gentle husband play with their children, knowing that beneath his soft smile lay a storm that could break worlds. She had married a human to end a war. She had found something far more precious. She had found home,